The day it happened started quiet. I came home from work like I always did. It was just after 6. The sun was setting behind the oaks in our front yard, casting long shadows across the driveway. I remember thinking how peaceful it looked. Still. Too still. The front door was cracked open. My wife never left it like that. Inside, the silence hit me harder than any noise ever could. No cartoons from the TV, no tiny feet pattering down the hall, no daddy's home yelled from the stairs. Just the soft hum of the refrigerator and a sound I couldn't place at first. It was the water in the upstairs bathroom, running, steady, unbroken. I called out for Emily, for Sarah, for Jamie. Nothing. A rising chill started at the base of my spine. I climbed the stairs slowly. The air grew heavier with each step. When I turned the corner into the hallway, the smell hit me. Copper. Thick. Wet. My chest locked up. The first body I saw was Sarah's, my daughter. 7 years old. Her eyes were still open. Her throat wasn't. Her teddy bear was soaked red beside her. Jamie, 5, was further down, slumped against the wall like he had been trying to run. His arms were covered in defensive wounds. That detail would come back later, like a nail driven into my brain. Then Emily. In our bedroom. Her nightgown shredded. Blood soaked the mattress. Her mouth had been taped, but torn off. Her eyes were swollen. There were signs of a struggle, but she hadn't stood a chance. She was pregnant. 5 months. I didn't even know if it was a boy or girl. I screamed. I don't even remember doing it, but neighbors said they heard. That's why the cops came. But they didn't come in with sympathy. They came in shouting, guns drawn. Shoved me to the floor, face down into the carpet, my family's blood still fresh on it. One of them cracked my ribs with his knee while cuffing me. Another read me my rights. I barely heard him over the sound of my pulse, the rage in my throat. They said the back door had no forced entry. Said I must have let myself in. Said I had the motive. Said Emily was seeing someone else. Said I found out. Snapped. Lost it. They never found a lover, never found a confession, just the story they needed. In lockup, I didn't sleep. I replayed every second of that night. I thought about what Emily told me the week before, about the 2 men who came to the door asking weird questions, claimed to be from the city but their plates were from out of state, wore suits too clean for door-to-door anything. She said they asked about something I might have seen on a construction site. Asked about a name I didn't recognize. I brushed it off at the time, thought they were scammers or something worse. But now, lying on that cot with my wrists raw and my family in the morgue, I knew it was them. They came to silence us, and when I wasn't home, they made it look like I had done it myself. The cops didn't want to listen. The DA didn't want to hear it. They built a timeline, painted me with a brush dipped in blood and madness. They didn't care about truth. They wanted a conviction. But I wasn't going to die in a cage. Not for them. So I started planning. The first thing I did was fake the breakdown they expected. In court, I sat silent. Blank. Let them call me a killer. Let the jurors look at me like I was filth. I knew how to play the part. I needed time. In the holding cell, I kept to myself. But I listened. Talked to guys with connections. One name kept coming up. Frank Keller. Ex-con turned fixer. Word was if you needed something outside the law, he was your man. I found a way to get him a message. It took 2 weeks, but he came. When we finally talked, I told him everything. Not just about the murder. About the suits, the visit, the threats. I showed him the hidden email Emily had sent me the night before she died. A message I had only read after they let me go through her phone for evidence. It said, "They're watching. If anything happens, it wasn't you." It was buried in a draft folder, never sent. Maybe they interrupted her before she could finish. Maybe she panicked. Keller believed me. Maybe not all of it, but enough. He agreed to help. Over the next 2 months, I built my list. Names, faces, timelines, everything. I tracked down who visited my home, who wiped the security footage from the neighborhood, who doctored the lab reports, who made sure the press got the wrong story. Every cog in the machine that buried me. And I prepared for the trial. Not for my defense, for my message. The courtroom was full on day one. Reporters, victims' rights groups, students from the local college studying criminal law. The prosecution painted a masterpiece of horror. Angry husband, overwhelmed father, financial stress, a recent argument over the baby. All lies. But slick. Polished. When it was my turn, I didn't say a word. Not yet. On the third day, I told my lawyer to step down. He begged me not to. I insisted. I stood, looked at the jury and said, "You think I killed my family. I don't blame you. That's what they want you to think." The judge tried to shut me down. I didn't let him. I started naming names. First the man who doctored the evidence logs. Then the officer who deleted body cam footage. Then the neighbor who said he saw me enter the house at 5:50 when I was actually still at the gas station. I had the receipt. I had the timestamp. Every name I dropped had a piece of truth attached. A document, a phone record, a witness. Keller's guys had done their job. I had hidden it all in plain sight. Mailed it to reporters, dropped flash drives under courtroom benches, sent anonymous tips to rival DAs. But the real plan hadn't started yet. That came with the verdict. The jury found me guilty. Of course they did. And that's when the bloodbath began. The gavel cracked like a gunshot. Guilty. Murder. In the first degree. For each of them. Emily, Sarah, Jamie, the baby. They stacked the sentences like bricks around my grave. Some jurors cried, a few looked away. The prosecutor smirked like it was personal. The judge never met my eyes. They led me out in cuffs again. Same steel. Same sting. But inside, I wasn't broken. I was boiling. Because now that they'd sentenced me, everything I had set in motion could begin. The first target was the false witness, Greg Thomas. Lived 2 doors down. Said he saw me enter the house before 6. But he didn't see me. He saw someone wearing my jacket, my cap. One of Keller's people followed Greg home after the verdict. He found him drunk in his garage, celebrating with a buddy. Said he did his part. That night, his car exploded right in the driveway. Took out half his garage with it. They ruled it a gas leak. His widow told reporters he had enemies in a gambling ring. She didn't mention me. She never suspected a man locked in a prison van. And that was the point. I got transferred to a maximum security facility 3 hours from the courthouse. Inmates watched me with dead eyes. Some recognized my face from TV. Some thought I was a monster. Some thought I was famous. I didn't care what they thought. Keller had contacts inside. People who owed favors. I was given work duty in the mailroom. That's all I needed. 1 letter at a time, I fed the fire. I sent a package to a journalist in Chicago. Inside was a USB loaded with files from a private investigator Keller had hired. Phone records linking Detective Harold Myers to the 2 men who visited Emily. Surveillance footage of him meeting one of them 3 days before the murder. A timestamp, a handshake, a fat envelope exchanged. The story broke 3 days later. Detective under fire for ties to key witnesses. Myers denied everything, called it fabricated. But by then, another name had surfaced, Daniel Grover, a former private security contractor discharged for misconduct. He was one of the men Emily saw, and now he was dead. Shot execution style in a motel outside Reno. No signs of forced entry. His throat slit after the shot, like someone was sending a message. No one connected the dots publicly. But those inside the machine started to sweat, especially the ones I hadn't named yet. I watched the news every night in the common room, sat alone, took no visitors, but I listened, watched, waited. In court, I had mentioned one last name. The judge tried to seal the transcript, but the damage was done. The name was William Cord. A city councilman, had been climbing fast, clean record, family man. But there was a rumor that Emily's company had caught his firm skimming funds off a city housing contract. Emily worked in accounts. Her audit notes were never found, but I had them. She had backed up everything to a private drive under a random file name and mailed the password to a friend before the murder, a friend who only opened the envelope after the verdict, who gave it to Keller, who gave it to me. Cord's face hit every major outlet when that audit surfaced. He denied it, called it political sabotage, but public pressure grew. Protesters outside City Hall, reporters digging through his campaign donors, and then his wife found him hanging in the garage. Suicide, they said, but there were bruises on his arms, defensive wounds, rope fibers under his fingernails, the same knot Emily's father taught me to tie for camping trips. That was 3 down, more to go. Inside prison, I kept moving. I made myself small, non-threatening, did what I was told, earned trust, learned the guards' names, their routines, who took bribes, who slept on duty. All of it fed into the next phase, because I wasn't staying inside forever. On the 6-month mark, an emergency drill was called during a thunderstorm. One hallway camera cut out, a door jammed, 2 guards were found unconscious in the staff bathroom, 1 inmate was missing. It took them 12 hours to admit it. By the time they issued an alert, I was already 2 states away. Face changed, hair buzzed, contacts in, wearing clothes stolen from a delivery truck Keller arranged. And I had a new name. I stayed off-grid, slept in safe houses, moved every 48 hours, but I never stopped watching. The people who took my family were unraveling. Detective Myers went missing 2 weeks after I vanished. His body was found in a marsh outside Baton Rouge. The lower half of his jaw was missing, teeth shattered, no fingerprints. The message left in his pocket was a child's drawing. A stick figure family, 3 smiling faces, 1 crossed out. The last target on my original list was the prosecutor, Nancy Ellison. Smart, ambitious, ruthless. She built her whole career on getting convictions. Didn't matter if they were guilty, just that they didn't fight back. She knew the truth, maybe not all of it, but enough. She had access to every piece of suppressed evidence. Ignored it, shredded it. She wanted a win, I gave her one, and now I was going to take it back. She lived in a gated community in California, had a beach house, a fiancé, 2 golden retrievers. I broke in while they were out to dinner. I didn't touch anything, just left a photo on her pillow. Emily, holding Jamie, with Sarah climbing on her back. A family frozen in joy, or underneath it a note. You killed them, you buried me, now it's your turn. She didn't go to the police. She ran, took a leave of absence, disappeared from public view. But I wasn't chasing her anymore. I had bigger plans. Because the people who pulled the strings, who hired the killers, who made me a scapegoat, weren't just individuals. They were part of something bigger. And it was time I dragged it all into the light. I didn't come this far for vengeance alone. I wanted destruction. Systemic, personal, public. It started with the shell company. Emily's audit notes had mentioned a name that didn't belong in city records. Norfield Logistics, supposedly a waste management subcontractor. But when I dug, it wasn't listed anywhere legitimate. No website, no business licenses, just post office boxes and a few ghost employees. I passed it to Keller's guy, Marcus, a cyber sleuth with no conscience. He followed the trail and found it led to a defense contracting group in Virginia. Blackstone Continental. Former military, former CIA, now private. Norfield was a front, a pipeline for laundering money through inflated municipal contracts. Emily found them. She wasn't supposed to. They had her killed to stop it. That was the real reason. Not because she saw 2 men at the door, not because we argued. Because she found the one thread that could unravel all of it, and they tied it around her neck. Now I had it. I leaked the files to 3 different journalists, one in Europe, one in Canada, one freelance hack who hated the government with a religious fervor. Gave them everything. The audit, the shell companies, the security footage, Myers, Cord, Grover. Then I went after the last man who mattered, the director of Blackstone. His name was Richard Fells, 72, retired colonel, cold eyes, smiled like a man who never made a mistake. He lived in a high-rise in D.C. with a private elevator and bulletproof windows. I couldn't get close, but I didn't need to, because I still had friends on the inside. And I still had a gift for planting seeds. I sent Fells a package, no name, no return address. Inside was a single page, a photo of Emily, a copy of the original audit, a note that read, "You missed one." 2 days later, his elevator malfunctioned, dropped 27 floors. No survivors. They said it was mechanical. But the footage was gone. The technicians never found the root cause. The report was sealed. But one thing leaked. The words burned into the wall of the elevator shaft in acid. Family isn't a weakness. It's what makes revenge eternal. That was the spark. Then came the blaze. The journalists dropped the story within hours of each other, coordinated, timed. Social media lit up, news networks scrambled to verify. People began connecting the deaths, the bomb, the hanging, the throat slit, the elevator. I watched it all from a motel room in Nebraska. TV on mute, rain tapping against the window like fingers, urging me to move. I was a ghost now, untraceable. The trial that was supposed to bury me became a monument, not to my guilt, but to their corruption. The whispers of my name weren't fear anymore, they were fuel. People debated my case, protested my sentence, asked why I had vanished after conviction, asked what I knew, and I made sure they found out. The final piece came from Emily's old workplace. Her manager had been too afraid to come forward before. But the weight of the media, the guilt, the anonymous threats, I had sent one myself, finally cracked him. He turned over internal memos, ones that showed Emily filed a formal concern about Norfield just 2 weeks before the murder. That was the nail. The DA's office retracted their confidence in the verdict. The judge was placed on leave. The court issued a formal inquiry into prosecutorial misconduct. Too late. No one could undo what they did. No one could pull me back from the pit I had crawled through. And no one could bring back Emily or the kids. But they would never forget them again. And they would never stop screaming. The state issued a warrant for my rearrest. Called me armed and dangerous. A fugitive, a vigilante. Said I'd orchestrated a campaign of murder and fear. They were right. But they still didn't get it. I wasn't running anymore, I was circling, watching, waiting for the next lie, the next betrayal. The next man who thought he could erase a family with paperwork and fire. And I still had names. I always had names. I returned home a year to the day after the verdict. Not to the house. It had been sold, repainted, stripped of memories by some couple who didn't know what the walls had seen. I went to the graveyard instead. Cypress Hills, northeast corner, plot 238, under a dying oak. Emily, Sarah, Jamie, and a small marker that read, Baby Reynolds, with no date. I stood there for over an hour, just watching, listening. There was a kind of silence in graveyards that didn't exist anywhere else. Not peaceful, not holy, just final. Honest. I sat beside their graves with a pack of photographs. I placed each one against the headstone. Emily in college, her hair caught in wind. Sarah in her ballet slippers, pretending to be a swan. Jamie on my shoulders at the zoo. And one of all 4 of us, at the beach, the last vacation before the storm. I whispered everything I'd done, every death, every confession I'd torn from men who thought silence could protect them. I told them none of it made me feel better. but I didn't do it for peace. I did it for permanence. The trial they gave me was supposed to erase us, turn me into a monster and them into footnotes. Instead, I turned it into a monument. Each scream, each whisper, each leak in obituary was proof that our story couldn't be buried. But I wasn't finished yet. There was one last name. Not a killer, not a conspirator. A man who stayed quiet when he should have screamed. The judge, Elliot Ramsey. He had the power to stop the trial, the authority to investigate the evidence. He saw the inconsistencies, saw my lawyer's objections, and still let them bury me. Because keeping the machine moving was easier than facing what it had become. I didn't want to kill him. I wanted him to live with it. So I waited outside his home. Quiet suburb, fenced yard, 2-car garage. I watched through the windows for a week. Saw the routines, morning coffee, evening bourbon, always alone. His wife had left him after the scandal. His son never visited. He had no friends, just his guilt. One night, I broke in while he slept. He woke to find me sitting across from him, wearing the same suit I wore the day of sentencing. He reached for the phone. I slid it away. Call them, I said. Tell them who I really am. Tell them what you really saw. His hand trembled. He said nothing. So I opened my bag and laid out a folder. Inside was every suppressed piece of evidence, every contradiction, the audit files, the missing footage, photos of every man who had died since the verdict. He didn't say a word for a long time, just stared. Finally, he asked, "Are you going to kill me?" I shook my head. "No. I'm going to leave this with you. I want you to look at it every night. I want you to wake up with it in your lungs. I want your dreams to be haunted by what you let happen." Then I handed him a pen. "I want you to write everything down, the truth. Sign it, date it, swear on it. You do that, maybe someone will finally hear us, maybe not, but you'll have to live with it either way." He wrote for 5 hours. I left before sunrise. I mailed the confession to every major news outlet, not anonymously. I signed it with my real name, Martin Reynolds. By then, they were already calling me something else. The Blood Trial. That was the headline that stuck. I didn't correct it. It served its purpose. The justice system tried to make me a monster, so I became one, but not their kind. Not the kind that hides in shadows and obeys orders. I became the kind that keeps score. They tried to erase me. Instead, I made sure that when people spoke of corruption, they spoke of Emily. When they mentioned accountability, they mentioned Sarah. When they told stories about justice found in the ashes, they said Jamie's name. I didn't disappear after that. I lived. Quietly, carefully, always moving, but I lived. Sometimes I'd see my face on the news, age-adjusted photos, theories, speculations, but no arrests, no sightings, just legend. Some people saw me as a hero, others as a killer. Both were right. I visited the graves once a year, on the day I came home to silence. Each time, I left behind another piece of the past. My wedding ring, a sketch Sarah had made of our family, Jamie's favorite Hot Wheels car. Slowly, piece by piece, I gave them back what had been stolen. I never remarried, never built a new life. I didn't want another. Mine had already been perfect, until they took it. And I made sure no one would ever forget what they took. Not with a trial, but with a bloodbath.